Okay, 1 2 1 2. I have no idea, but this is
It's okay. To the phone.
no, it's fine. I've got it. I'm actually plugged in. That's how I'm actually plugged in. Hi. Sorry, I had a problem with the first link and I had to end it, and then it doesn't allow you to restart that session. I don't know if you saw the camera with this blue icon. So I've restarted. Did you get them? That's what we actually. Okay, I'm still gonna have the sound is echoing. So I can't really hear anything at the moment. Don't phone me on my phone. Phone me on the phone. Which is this one. Yeah. If you need to phone me, don't phone me on my phone because that's being used as a camera.
You guys set up.
Thank you. Show people what they're missing out on. See me there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello? Oh, sorry. And how's that for sound? Can everybody hear me? Can? Yeah, okay. You got a speaker. Okay. For those who don't know me, I haven't met you yet. I'm Jonathan, Michael's elder brother. Ronnie over here is the older brother, much older. So just a quick thing on procedures this afternoon. We're obviously trying to stick to the COVID stuff, which doesn't seem to be working so well. But if we could try and keep ourselves at a distance and sanitize and do all the rest of it, that would be good. Drinks and snacks are going to happen right throughout. We're not stopping. Otherwise, we might just go short when we need some alcohol to help us through this moment. It's there for you. Okay. Today we're going to have a few words from. I'm opening up, and my daughter will say something on my behalf. John Atkinson, an old friend of Michael's, very old friend, not in age, but in length of service. Sorry, he is a minister as well. I forgot to put that in. Liz Fish from Carte Blanche is going to say a few words, and she's going to be reading out a number of tributes from that organisation, including one from John Webb. And Brian Notcutt is again, another very old friend of Michael, probably his oldest friend that we could find. So he's going to be ending the proceedings. I thought I would just say thank you to a few people before we got into the serious stuff. To everybody who have just inundated us with masses of messages of support, and also for all the wonderful tributes that have come in from all over the world and South Africa particularly. And to those who are going to say a few words, thank you, John, Liz, Brian, thank you, Ralph, thank you for organising the music. It was very kind of you, and more than generous. Thank you. Thank you to all of our friends that have supported us, the family, particularly over this time. And thank you to my family who supported me, particularly over the last week. Excuse me. Both of Michael's families have been utterly devastated by this tragedy. And nobody can prepare, absolutely nobody can prepare for this. This comes out of the blue. Our massive condolences to Najma for her loss. As you know, Najma can't be here today due to her mourning processes that she's following. So massive condolences to her and her family. None of us will ever know or understand what it takes to drive somebody to this point in life where they no longer want part of it. None of us realized, frankly, how troubled Mike was. Over the past week, though, it has become apparent to us that the reach Michael has into the hearts of so many hundreds of friends and associates, resulting in massive love and affection for him. It's for me, it's been an amazing experience because there's part of Michael that I have learned in this last week that I didn't know about. His incredible friendship, the giving that he has, the giving that he gives, the way he affects people's lives and their hearts has just been, for me, a complete eye-opener. I am absolutely astounded by the number and the circle of friends that he has developed over the years that we, frankly, as a family, have been almost unaware of. It's an amazing thing. But I also wonder if he actually ever realized this, okay? Because this incredible trait or gift that he had, right, far outweighed those weaknesses that he saw in himself. So, you know, you've got to ask if he actually felt those if he could feel the outpouring of love that people had for him, you know, be it blunt, would we be here today? And that's always going to be in the back of our minds. Lee, my daughter, Michael's niece, right, or sausage, as he called her, right, has a short tribute for Michael, which I think sums him up perfectly.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Okay. Mike's tribute to Michael. Okay. Mike's kindness has no boundaries. Mike's compassion had no boundaries. Mike's imperfections had no boundaries. Mike's creativity had no boundaries. He was a talented clarinet player, a comedian, an eccentric, a journalist, a producer, a counselor, a husband, a friend, a brother, a godfather, an uncle, and a humanitarian. To say that we are absolutely devastated is an understatement. He would light up the room when he walked in. His eccentric ways would not only shock everyone, but you'd have everyone collapse of laughter. He was outrageous, but contagious. He was inappropriate, yet lovable. His storytelling skills came through his journalism and film. He put his heart into everything he did, which ultimately might have been to his detriment. He judged absolutely no one. He accepted everyone at face value. He listened and he gave everyone the time of day. Nicknames for everyone. I was Sausage. I thought it was my reserved name, but I believe there are lots of sausages out here today. If that's inappropriate or not appropriate. Anyway, no one will ever know how many phones he lost, how many cameras he drove over, how many laptops he left on the top of his car. The list of lost property and flat camera batteries never took away from his wonderful work and dedication in telling the truth. He filmed our wedding, but 10 minutes into the wedding, we lost the rest of the footage. That was Mike. He also, fell over and broke cameras and anyway. But there are lots of stories about Mike, but one that stood out for me was when he set his car on fire. He was having a ciggy in his car and he threw it out the window. Well, he thought he threw it out the window. There were flames and smoke, but luckily he had an open Coke to put out the fire. And another one I learned about recently, he was driving in Johannesburg in my dad's car, and he thought that the toll gates were automatic. So he failed to slow down coming through the toll gate and drove through the booms. I never told you, yeah. Anyway, he leaves behind two brothers, confidence, and who were a support to him to the bitter end. Dad and Ron, I know how much you cared for him and how much he loved you both. From many hours of watching Grand Prix, long chats, horrendous Christmas presents, but there was a present for everyone and there was a long story behind it. There were lots of laughs with our family. He was an absolute hoot to have around. Dad, you had so much time for him, as you do for everyone, and you worked with him through all his difficulties. Thank you for always being there for him and Najma. It's a giant loss. There are no words to comprehend his passing, but we take comfort knowing he's at peace, possibly in the nude.
We love you, Mike. Rest in peace, Mike. Rest in peace. Who's up? John. Well, let me take this off. With you all, I'm trying to come to terms with a great loss. With you, I'm grappling with the unanswered questions which Michael said inevitably leaves for all who knew him well. We must accept that we may never have the answers that we're seeking. And that's one of the difficult things to come to terms with. There have been some tremendous tributes written about Michael, and I'm not going to add much to them because they so eloquently describe the man. Instead, I trust you'll excuse the fact that I'm going to speak of Phyllis, my wife, and my very personal experience of our 44-year friendship. I met Mike in the Army in 1977. We were part of the Weinberg Commando Unit, which sounds much more efficient than it was. And we were sent to the Caprivi Strip for Christmas, largely a ragtag bunch of students who could not claim to be studying over the December period for an exemption, and who could not, as you can imagine, the commitment against the total onslaught was non-existent. I was in charge of the infantry medics, and I managed to convince the authorities that I needed another medic so that Mike could join me and avoid the more unpleasant duties in the camp. It was in this context that I first encountered Michael's empathy for others. I was trying to teach him to put up a drip, but he was so concerned about causing pain with the needle, a concern he explained in great detail to each volunteer I provided, that 2 men fainted before any skin was pierced. Needless to say, the sight of 2 unconscious soldiers was enough to make further volunteers disobey my orders. Michael took the photographs at our wedding in 1981, and of course he lost the negatives. The following year, I became curate at St. Thomas's Church, Rondebosch, and Phyllis was a prosecutor at Weinberg Magistrates Court. She had a lot more to do with Mike during this period because at that stage he was working as a probation officer, the result of a social work degree from UCT. I have to say at this point that one of Mike's greatest strengths was his ability to relate to anyone, regardless of who they were or their status in society. Over time, Michael became an honorary member of our family, spending a great deal of time in our home, often accompanied by his devoted dog, Elaine Prost. We loved having him around, and it was during this time that he was appointed as the head of the Cape Town Drug Counseling Centre, and there are many stories attached to that. I was appointed, I was studying psychology at the time, and our common interest in counseling led to many lengthy discussions about personality theories and counseling techniques. Michael had a curiosity about people that was absolutely endless. The more complex and more strange their lives were, the greater Mike's curiosity. By the 1990s, I'd been appointed to Christchurch, Kenilworth, where Michael worshipped at the time, played his clarinet in the orchestra. Phyllis, at this stage, was a state advocate, and Michael was wanting to be a councillor full-time. We moved into a house just 3 blocks away from Michael's home in Bedford Street in Hartfield Village. And around this time, John and Jean Duffett, Mike's parents, passed away within a year of each other. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was within 6 months of each other. And Phyllis and I both were really struck by the amazing tenderness with which Mike cared for his mother in St. Luke's Hospice during her last days. We have many memories of time spent together, many happy and sad times as Michael struggled with trying to overcome the chaos that was so much part of his life. We all know about this side of Michael because he spoke about it, and that's another of Michael's strengths, his ability to be honest with himself and about his own failings. Michael moved into the City Bowl, and we had less contact with him, although every Friday we would meet and have lunch together and solve the world's problems. At this stage, Mike was moving into the film industry and working mainly for the Cape Town waterfront. It was a really good beginning, but Michael's curiosity would not be satisfied with the confines of the waterfront, and he began making programs which took him further afield. Eventually, as you all know, his work was picked up by Carte Blanche, and he made some award-winning programs which he would talk about at the time of making, but seldom at the time of receiving the award. I was unaware of most of the awards that he received, and yet we talked about his work all the time. He gave no indication that his life would take a different turn in terms of his work. He had found a niche that, while it was terribly stressful, clearly answered what he was looking for. He could be curious about people, he could find out about strange situations, and what's more, he could film them at the same time. Michael's dream. But I can't help thinking that maybe one of the reasons he didn't talk about the awards that he received was because he didn't really believe that he'd earned them. And only Michael knows the answer to that question. We last saw him 3 weeks before his death. He was not in a good place, but he seemed to be taking the right steps and making sure he was receiving the psychological support he needed. He gave no indication that his life would soon end, but on reflection, we both wonder whether he'd come to say goodbye. It has been said that our greatest strengths are simultaneously our greatest weaknesses. The strengths that seem to come naturally are so often the very things that trip us up. I can't help wondering if Michael did not pay a personal price for the strengths that we all admire in him so much. His curiosity and empathy took him to some very dark places in society. His ability to relate to almost anyone put him in contact with people who did not necessarily seek his well-being. These and many others are unanswered questions with which Michael's death has left us. I want to conclude by saying a few words about a subject that we might reasonably find difficult. Taking your own life is not a rational act. It happens when emotional pain exceeds a person's resources for coping with that pain. It doesn't make you a bad person, or crazy, or weak, or flawed. On the other hand, because it's not a rational act, it's not heroic either. It just is. It doesn't even mean that you really want to die. It only means that you have more pain than you're able to cope with at that moment. With you, we cherish our memories of a good friend and are deeply saddened by the fact that it ended all too soon. We'll always miss Michael's presence in our lives. And yes, I was also called Sausage. I am going to do something that comes naturally to me as a minister. I'm going to say a prayer. And if you want to join me, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, just be patient and I'll finish. Lord God, King of the universe, you are full of compassion and mercy. Just and true are all your ways, though we may not understand them. In your hand are the lives of the living and the dead. We thank you that your Son, Jesus, came into the world to share our sufferings and to enter into our sorrows. We entrust our dear friend and brother Michael to you. We praise you for his life, for his concern for others, for his many acts of kindness, and we commend him to your love and mercy. In your presence there is life and health and the fullness of joy, and at your right hand there is rest from suffering and wholeness. We lift before you Najma, Ron and his family, and Jonathan and his family. Give comfort to us who wait to know you in your fullness. Heal our broken hearts. Bind up our wounds, that we may know the consolation of your love and the joy of your salvation, that we may live before you in your shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you his peace. Amen.
I'm Michael's colleague and friend, and I have the unenviable task of trying to convey to you the carte blanche, the team, and how we are all reeling in shock and disbelief and asking ourselves, what more could we have done? We all talk to Mike a great deal about his work, about his troubles, about his brilliance. And yeah, I have the task to try and convey some of that to you. So let me just start by saying he was a very good and generous friend to me who supported me through my stories. And I regret not having that cup of coffee we always said we'd have. Somehow COVID made that harder. And I spoke to him the week before last on Thursday and reached out and said, how are you doing, Mike? And we said we were going to have that cup of coffee. So, the first tribute is from John Sparks, the director of Compound Artists, who produces Carte Blanche, and he's currently in England. So I'll read a short extract from him. Like all of you, I'm deeply saddened to hear the passing of Michael. I find it, sorry, I have to get rid of the tears so I can see. Claudia, can you bring some water? Thanks. Thank you. Sorry. I thought I did better than that. It's supposed to be hard on journos. Okay. So, like all of you, I'm deeply saddened to hear the passing of Michael. What I find particularly tragic is that despite having a collective great love and affection for the man, we were all powerless to help him with his internal struggles. Michael always wore his heart on his sleeve and had the most wonderful self-deprecating sense of humor. When he came to the office at the Carte Blanche office in Joburg, you had no idea what he was going to do or say. A hug was mandatory, but it could easily be accompanied by a kiss and a comment that was often inappropriate and totally outrageous. I just loved listening to him make his way through the office, dispensing affection, love, humor to everyone he came across. I don't know anyone who took offense regardless of what he said, because that was Michael's way of telling you that he cared about you. And this is from John Webb, and I really wish he could read it with his deep voice and resonance. And he's in Ireland, and Michael spoke to him a great deal. And I asked him if I could read this on his behalf. I have edited it somewhat. There's a risk in paying tribute to the departed of drifting into obsequiousness, of eulogizing them to the point of sainthood. I don't intend doing that here. because Michael Duffett and I had very little in common and should not have been friends. We should not have been friends because of his unusual relationship with food. He liked his pizzas thin, so thin he could fax them. His burgers singed at the edges. In the many years as colleagues, I don't recall him ever eating anything remotely healthy. If he stopped for a snack, it was a tempo and a Coke rather than a salad. A significant part of any shoot day was set aside for the inevitable search for lost car keys, driver's license, pen, notepad, glasses, camera, tripod, all manner of items that weren't nailed down. A last-minute airport dash to Bangalore, almost scuppered by a misplaced passport. Yes, his forgetfulness was another reason we should not have been friends, and on that occasion we weren't, at least for the duration of the flight. And many of our conversations went unfinished because of the allure of cigarettes and strangers. He was unrelentingly inquisitive and seemed almost obsessive in his desire to meet new people and hear their stories. I got used to finishing my meals in the company of my phone while he dragged his chair to a neighboring table or swapped details with the fellow smoker. Another reason why Michael and I should not have been friends. The list of things that should have made our friendship unthinkable accumulated over years of work in almost every corner of South Africa and 3 assignments abroad was endless. The creative disagreements, a camera held together with masking tape and a prayer, his insistence on calling judges and politicians darling, the way he recoiled in shock when he realized Kinshasa wasn't a riverside paradise full of cafes serving cocktails and canapes, the time he cracked an egg at a hotel breakfast table, oblivious of the need to boil it. Michael was disarmingly charming, it's true, and funny and mischievous and irreverent. Wrap them all together, the minor irritations, the frailty, the flaws, the compassion, the jokes, and you have a man most often described as complex. In conversations following the news of his death, it's a word I've used to describe him too, but now I wonder, is it true? Was he a simple man with simple expectations of himself and of others? It seems to be the empathy and compassion that was so characterized by his interactions with others and shaped his approach to storytelling might not have come from a complex man. It came instead from someone not afraid to reveal what most of us try and hide, our frailties, our imperfections, our foibles. Is it not more complex to disguise from the world the traits we believe might shrink our worth? To pretend we're not as anxious, as racked by doubt, and as lonely as we sometimes are. Michael put his flaws on display, and in doing so appeared better able to see them in others and want to help if help was needed. It made him a better storyteller, a better friend, and I would argue a better man. It also made him vulnerable and sometimes very sad. Perhaps as a simple man in a complex world. I miss you, Michael Duffett. I already do. I'll never forget him. Rest in peace. And this is from Joan Summers, one of our not oldest, but oldest producers. I think she's probably been there 25, maybe 30 years, I don't know. This comes from Joy. The rigors of carte blanche demand that we put our grief in a box and move on to the next deadline, but this is not what we must do. We must honor his life and grieve him, because he was a gift to us, of how to be kind and beautiful and a caring human being, whimsical, funny, and fragile, an extremely dedicated and talented carte blanche producer who would travel miles at his own expense to get a shot he knew would improve his story, even if it was only for 20 seconds. It was impossible not to love Michael, with all his eccentricities. Let us take time to reflect on this beautiful soul who leaves behind a huge void amongst us. And my week has been producers all around the country phoning and sharing our conversations, our love, our shock at our loss. This comes from Chantisa, which sadly she and Michael shared a great passion for Formula One. Michael and I really got more passionate and heated than when we spoke about our shared love for Formula One. Sundays were almost always for races, and nothing beats watching Formula One with Michael. Me in Joburg, Michael in Cape Town. But we might as well have been in the same room. Come to think of it, he still owes me an old book about Lewis Hamilton. Michael was an extraordinarily complex person who loved people wholeheartedly and who felt every emotion intensely. He commanded attention at every gathering, and he absolutely demanded a hug and a kiss on the cheek, as many as you could spare. In the last few days, I haven't been able to find the words to fully articulate how great this loss has been to me. And all I know is that I'm praying he's at peace. And this is the one from Tim Vega, who spent a great deal of time with Michael and filmed all his last stories, from the Table Mountain one to the gangs in Mitchell's Plain, to truffles, to magic muffins, to them all. And you're not here. No, he didn't make it. Okay. When I first met Michael, filming at the launch of the Cobra roller coaster in Rotunda Junction, his first words to me were, "Hello, my boy, are you in the nude?" I remember clearly the incident of the missing sandwich in the boot of his car. Its presence was given away by the most incredible smell emanating from his boot. I remember the incident of the T-shirt and a viewfinder. His viewfinder was broken, so he spent the best part of the shoot with a black T-shirt over his head, peering into the viewfinder like a photographer from the 18th century. On every single story, he was always completely honest and empathetic. He did a story about 3 mothers in Mitchell's Plain who'd lost their sons to gang shootings. It was a tough story, but because of Michael's directness and empathy and his ability to diffuse a situation by saying something completely outrageous, he made it easier for everyone, particularly the mothers. He also lost his keys in every one of their houses. I will miss him, his brutal honesty and lack of a filter. And I'll stop now because, as Michael would say, you're starting to irritate me now. Go well, Michael.
Right, I'm going to probably end up reading this because I never know what's quite going to happen when you get to talk about my human emotions and stuff like that. So forgive me. I also have a knee operation. I want to get the excuses again, so very reason to crack up. And so I might get in funny odd positions and doing things. But it's funny, it's kind of a privilege to be here, knowing Michael for such a long time. To even say anything at this time is a privilege, but it's a sad thing. Right, so I'm going to be sorry about this, But I met Michael at school. I went to Bishop's, it's a boys' school, and we were eager, budding male teenagers growing up, we were yearning for adulthood and everything like that. I mean, Mike was actually a bit of an anomaly. He was kind of like, out of time and place. He walked around the school whistling hymns such as Onward, and then he stopped and said, "Hey, would you like to join in the company? We'd like to take up the level." You look, I go, what the hell is this guy about? I mean, get real, Anyway, he was weird. That's what, so what kind of the other weirdos at school, they're the people who walk around there, you go, "Hi!" Michael could never be brushed off with a hi. It was not going to happen. At school, we all had heroes, and they played sports, but Michael and I were not the athletic types, and we understood this. We're not the athletic types at all. But Michael had heroes, and number one was Danny Howe. I mean, who had heard of him? God, I mean, none of us knew who he was. Then, of course, there was Billy Goodman. I mean, look. He was so passé to a teenager that if you did know him, you wouldn't admit it to others. I mean, Benny Goodman, God, And these are 2 major sort of passion heroes. Benny Goodman led the clarinet, and we know. And Danny Helm, that's it. Well, we will get Benny. Michael got very upset. But, the Grand Prix racing, you hear people talk about this, and you just cannot avoid it if you get in touch with Michael. He was irrationally passionate about, these things. From the early years, when you looked at Michael back in Sun, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, there were these little sketches, notes. And it was a car going around the corner, or it was a helmet and close up, and that was, I couldn't tell if that was anything inside or not. The fact was, it was just a helmet, and it was amazing. He just lived in a world and lived it fully, fully, fully. All right, so that was, yeah, so that was him. This is Grand Prix ambition, this obsession. I was not perturbed that his friends had no real interest at all in Grand Prix. In fact, we all jeered, there's motorsport, motorsports. If you're a spectator, Michael, I mean, it's like, yo, 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 yo. That was it, I mean, he was not perturbed at all, And likewise, he lost about Benny Goodman, in the 70s, we were listening to things like, oh, Elton John, Gilbert Rose, Daniel, oh, Cat Stevens, Heaven's Mother Child Reunion, and things. Oh, don't forget, Deep Purple and, Smoke on the Water. Benny Goodman? I asked you. Anyway, Benny Goodman did not cut it as far as we're concerned. But Mike was not put off. I mean, did he change? No. From beginning to end, no. The last day he died, Benny Goodman, the clarinet's coming out. Okay. He did say that Queen were quite good toward the end, didn't he? Heaven's alive. Yeah, he must have heard that play a couple of times. Yes, okay. Anyway, was he isolated by this? This different, strange guy, was he isolated by this? No. No. I mean, did he have no impact on us as all his friends? I mean, was he frustrated? Well, the other interesting part is by the time we left school, we'd all meet up with friends at Chelsea's Arms, Saturday afternoon to hear Brian White and Dixon and Jazz Band all play there. We'd all sit there with Michael, and Michael would be guest artist now and then to play his clarinet. It was like, we don't even like Dixieland. What are we doing here? We were there for Michael, and he made us love it. We didn't experience it at all. We loved it. We turned up there. All right, that was not the only one, but by the time we, I was going to say, I suppose actually Michael could be seen as an influencer, if that's a modern terminology, But I mean, what was it about him that was so bloody infectious? What was it? I far more damaging was the amount of us who subsequently sat down to watch the Grand Prix on Sunday evening. We'd never done it before. We watched, and let me tell you, if you were lucky enough, you could sit in the same room as Michael. We've not had the telephone, my dear. We sat in the same room as Michael, and Michael would let loose tirades of advice and warning. Oh no! Look at that! Did you see what he did? Okay. Yes, Brian. Oh, where did you get it? Sadly, obviously not. Far more damaging. Sorry. Of course, his other passion was camera and photos. I mean, I will not even talk about that, but we all know. You've seen the shots, you've seen the films. These were stills in those days. He had the Canon, the Nikon. That's where the big thing was. He got that. And I dare say that many of us have benefited from his passion. I bet you Michael has taken a lot of wedding photos, a lot of occasions, a lot of events, and we've all, been at, and he's taken them for us. As friends, we were lucky to have the most extraordinary photos taken of us, and at that moment recorded, memories caught forever in countless group photos. Us growing up, different ages, different moods, different people we were with. Wonderful record. Not one negative. There was a sensitivity that he had about his eye. When it was just the right moment to catch someone on something, he would see it, and he'd sit there. I know often we'd sit there talking, Michael, take the picture. He'd just sit there, sit there. On special zoom, and then you look away, so he got the moment. But he didn't waiting for it. He just saw it. He wanted something more each time. And they were the most extraordinary things, they really were. He had an eye for revealing more about the person, and he often recorded so aptly the feelings and not just the action. One day we thought, take the picture, get the action. He wanted the people in that. He saw that from the start. And of course, if you did not quickly get the negatives out of his hands, there'd be no reprints next week. We tried to convince him. I mean, this is a sad thing. I think, had we known now what we do now, we tried to convince him to give us the negatives as soon as the film was developed, and we would actually have a filing system. Alas, we have no negatives. Not one, and we begged every time. It's exactly the same as you hear from John on his thing. It's exactly the same as the car keys, everything from pens, tickets, to papers, to money, to ID, to whatever, to everything. It vanished. I mean, as friends, we thought, it's so simple, we're going to change him. So what you do is you go out, and we got the steerings that respond. You clap your hand, it thinks like that, And when you whistle, that's it. Michael, with every key, he does the keyring,
Anyway, so what happened is you supply them all these things, and you have these strange areas, these strange things. You've all been to the party, you've all been doing something at night, oh, lovely all together. And my goes, right, I'm just going, oh, my keys. Where'd you put them? Yeah, never. Where'd you put them? Oh, what? So of course, oh, well, a whole group of people, ridiculous, and absolutely ridiculous. We never solved it. Not once. You've heard, we thought we'd say make a difference. Big a mistake. So Michael lost everything. I mean, everything he lost, I never thought he was going to lose cameras, but, I learned today. So I think it's this flaw that led him to develop his highly successful art of irresponsibility skills. He developed this, it's an art form, the inappropriate, the irresponsible. And it was he chose that. That's what he chose each time. He went to that first time, and he's sitting here absolutely won. He knew how to work it. Nobody else ever did, okay? But before I get there, what sort of thing made you a friend with Michael? Well, it certainly wasn't his diet, burgers and Coke. I think he drank more Coke than water in his whole life. It certainly wasn't his healthy lifestyle. I mean, how many cigarettes? I used to drink 14 cups of coffee a day, and he'd had 3 times the amount of cigarettes a day. And, well, in fact, he got so good at giving up cigarettes that he gave up about 12 times, easily, really. And the attraction of Michael was he was like an irresponsible child, wasn't he? Just like an irresponsible. He knew how to play like a kid, and that was amazing if you're a friend. He could play. He drove a 50cc motorbike, as it was a Honda 750. He and I had cars. His was a big blue Cortina, a big 620 looking to a style vehicle, big bonnet at the front there. He never looked after it. Nothing new. Masking tape everywhere. The front doors didn't close properly. When you got in the front there, he handed you a tie, and you looked through that. He said, tie the arm there, tie the arm here. Tied the door closed with the arm here, the tie goes right across. And that's where you drove off? Okay. That's interesting. Everyone's alive. Now, I'd be driving along in the car, in the other car, and all people say, I'll go with him. I'll go with him. And Michael, come on. And that seat, like you thought it was a Grand Prix driver, so the slump look, so you just look over the steering wheel. Unbelievable. And his other thing too is he worked. I don't know how he worked this car. It never happened in another car scene. He got his gear lever to come loose, so he could go. We had the traffic light, was very good. At the traffic light, we're about to take off. Take the gear lever out, hold it up, and no victory. There we are, I'm in fourth, yeah. Michael, put the gear lever back here. Oh my God. It's going back in now. Did he take it off to get fixed? No. We thought we'd change him. Come on, we've got to get this man to grow up, to mature. Big mistake. So whenever you all drive together, this was the wonderful thing. Whenever you drive together as a group, this age, we're about 18, we're about 25 actually. You all go along, you dramatically, you drive together as a group. So you all got to go round about twice, yes. Just like children, but you're in your 20s, late 20s. If you're carrying the passengers, the driver, he gets to the traffic light and he yells out, Chinese fire drill, and you all get out and you have to run around the car and get back in before like it's green and he drives off, that sort of. So he's stopping, Chinese fire drill, my car gets out, his car gets out, someone get back in. And you think, what? How old are these idiots? Do you want to know how much fun I had? Do you want to know how I played into my 20s? It was fantastic. Absolutely ridiculous, yes. Totally immature, yes. Fantastic. Michael knew how to play. Irresponsible, but actually not dangerous, but irresponsible, A gear lever, mind you. Never mind, okay. And then, if you were carrying passengers, yes. If you're going to drive the same place, you know the rules, of course. At this point, here's the T-junction. You have to go that way, but I'm going that way. I have to get there. Who's going to get there first? We didn't have little cell phones in those days, but we got there, which is such fun. Racing, innocent And silly, definitely. Okay, how stupid can you get? We used to carry eggs in our cars. And so what happens is that, you know, you're going to pass each other in the day. Oh, quick! The passenger, pass the eggs! There's Brian! Eggs all on the side of my car, yolk running down. If you go fast enough, them flying off the back there. But it's like, really? How stupid? Wait, let me get the bag. You know, I don't believe it. We did it. Michael was much more, you know, chewed up. He kept his eggs for 3 weeks in the sun. You want to know when you hit by one of those buggers? Oh. When I first got married, my wife used to get very tired very early on, and Michael and I would talk late into the night. And then she'd say, I'm going to bed. Of course, we said, oh, yes, of course, love, you do that. You go to bed. What a sensible person. Out came the backgammon. 5 o'clock in the morning, Trish gets up. Oh, you're still here, Michael. You just one more game, one more. If you've lost, you know, Michael, one more game. If you actually haven't lost, you think we should stop now. We should stop now, you know. Never changed. How many of you ever played knuckles with Michael and lived to regret it? Knuckles, you, hands like it, you know. Okay, come on, yes, yes. Michael had absolutely stunning reactions. Michael sitting there and he goes, yeah, what happens is that I'm going to hit you now. You've got to take it away. It's going to hit you. It's easy. You see, oh, you see, that's the soul now. They don't do that to you. But you take the hand away now. Oh, shame. Let's take the hand away quick. Oh, I'm going to hit you again. I think I'll hit you now. Yes, yes. And you just walk away, bruised, knuckles swollen. He was unbelievably good. He thought it was fun. He just gloat. So in our 40s, 2 grown men could be seen playing last touch and chasing each other around cars and gardens. Were we ever going to grow up? Oh, I hope not. I mean, I had a childhood that extended into what I don't know. And Michael made it possible. He made it insane but wonderful. Life had no limits, and being with him was the best experience I can explain. It was totally stupid. Ah, damn it, right. Michael was the sort of person you could say to suddenly at an insane time, like, listen, I hear tomorrow night, thanks a lot, somebody's coming into Joburg, they're playing there. Let's drive up. And Mike would say, I must just hand that carte blanche to him, then bugger it, let him do it. And he would do it. You just do these, you have adventure. And I thought, my word, I miss that. So, the truth is, of course, okay, it was as if he had no responsibility, as if he had none. He was happy to let people think that. He always let you think that, didn't he? I'm the most irresponsible, I'm the most useless, I'm the worst. And sometimes he believed it about himself, often. But he never put himself above anybody else. And actually, in truth, he worked very hard. Very hard. He was like a friend like no other. He would turn up when things were sad, bad, or rad. Michael would turn up. Just because of it. He could talk with such care, empathy, honesty. So one knew truth and sincerity. You knew when Michael said, you know, Brian, bullshit. No. He cared. He meant it. He was saying out of care and concern. I thought we did the same back. I worried we never able to dispel his fears and put them at ease. He played the art of the irresponsible. What I mean by that, he would let you know how useless he was, how inappropriate he was, how inadequate he was, and he would listen and let you speak. And he was never above you looking down, ever, 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 ever. So you always talk to Michael, because it was okay, absolutely okay. He never judged you for anything, any one thing you said. Yes, you talk the dismissive. I mean, heavens alive, what's the inappropriate? What always these inappropriate ones. He won many awards, which I'm so glad to see. It was put down by a classmate of his, Mark, the awards. You know, I was a friend for years. I'm probably one of the longest lasting friends. And all I can tell you is that I talked to him about 2 awards. It didn't mean they weren't important for him. It meant that that wasn't what he was chasing. But he really liked his friend. He liked his contemporaries to understand and to actually say, well done, Mike. He loved that, yes. But he didn't run after it as the most important thing at all. No. He cared in such a way, I believe, that he shared with us, and we can thank him for showing us how to do it. It's been a privilege to have a friend like that, like no other. We went for tea a few days ago, and we sat down, and he didn't call me a homo this time, but I sat down, and having the problem in mind, excuse me, I think it is embarrassing. Okay. And we sat down there, and he called the waitress over, and he's talking to me, hi Brian, yeah, and the waitress said, hi love, what's your name? Marion. Marion. Are you here today? You working with her? Okay, that's lovely. I think you're lovely, Marion. Marion thinking, he's odd. But I'm loving this. I'm actually going to come and serve this table the whole day. You know, it's wonderful. Marion, I think we decide what we want. I think we decided, why have you decided? We're two guys here. He's gay, I'm not. I mean, I knew I was talking to Michael. I knew I was at home, you know, immediately. Just then. He was disarming deliberately. He met people for the first time, he grabbed their elbow and said, can I feel your crinkly, your wrinkly? Entirely inappropriate. They would look at him with a sense of shock. They've just met this guy. What's he saying, you know? But an hour later, having felt everybody's wrinklies everywhere, they would feel very much at ease and wanting to chat to him and wanting to talk. And it was an incredible skill which we don't get. You know, I think that it's not possible to get somebody who could actually do, for inmates, an empathy story and talk to people who've gone through that tragedy and talk to people at that level of life and then come and do some high-end thing. But Michael could do that. It was a special skill. I have to tell, just once it was there, sometimes I wouldn't want to work out for Michael. He was funny, inappropriate, disarming things. He would be able to chat to anybody, he would disarm them, and then let them know that he was at his level and not above them. I mean, he had degrees, he never told anybody. But all these things. And actually, Russ is your story when we were at the other day. And he just said, Russ was telling me, and I thought, this is just, his story, not mine. And he said, you know, we filmed Michael, it was lovely, we went into Parliament, and all the ministers are there, and everything like that, and all the ministers are sitting together, and he's doing, I think it was AIDS or something like that, developing a now. Anyway, the person behind the desk is a female, I don't know if I can name. Anyway, it was a female minister of health at that time, who's quite well related to a lot of government officials. Anyway, she was sitting there, I guess, and he put her behind the desk, you know, probably a lot of darlingness and everything, got them all behind there, and they all read, yes, right. I think, all right, yes, right, shall we do the first shot in the nude? And she said, what? She just said, what was that? What was that? And Michael moved on. He's learned one time, you obviously don't quite just be that dismissive. I have to say today, in front of people, thank you for a wonderful friendship, Michael. I miss you. Sorry.
We have one more short speech.
Thank you very much, John. I wasn't invited to speak. I'm not totally sober, I don't have notes, but somehow I feel that would have qualified me for Michael. I just want to talk about him a little bit as an artist because I produced the jazz festival at Grahamstown, which was the Smirnoff Jazz Festival. And one of the main artists was Basil Menenberg-Coetzee. And Basil used to go to bed at about 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. And there was one person in the world who could get him up at 6 a.m. And Michael produced a video of Basil Menenberg-Coetzee in Grahamstown from the monument, walking down the hill, sort of a copy, and he did it in black and white. And it was engaging. Immediately it was, well, why is it in black and white? And then at the show that night, it was an upshot, and there was the saxophone that was a golden sax, and his face had resolved into color. And what I knew and what the sponsor knew was that we knew what music sounded like, but Michael knew what music looked like, which was amazing. And it was a showstopper. And I will be brief by saying, first of all, that I renamed him. I told him that he didn't have exactly the right name for movies. So I said, Michael Duffett. So I always called him Michel Duffett. And there are a lot of sausages here. But I was his kosher sausage.
That's it, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks for the speeches. Everybody, for all of those who contributed. Fantastic. Cheers, Michael.
Yeah, I'm fine. You managed to go close.
Enjoy yourself.
Yeah. It's amazing the quality.
Sorry about
No, I mean, I thought it might be a bit of a long shot. That's why I made sure I could at least.
no, but it sounds like it was fine because Carol, no, because Tratisa said there was some saying that.
Yeah, I saw there about 10, at one stage about 10 people watching.
Okay. I lost because he sent it to me on the cell phone and I just couldn't get it.
Well, in the end, I had to start a new session because
It went on so long.
the group of responses restart. You've got to start a new session. So I had to send everybody a new link.
More than I could have managed Monday. I hate public speaking, so that was
I can't remember when did you start out? Did you say it?
No, I was active in the so I did what was called community video.